it way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown.
Well, last week we celebrated 200 episodes, and now we're off to the next 200, over to ground zero. So how do we go to 201? Well, we do the top 10 teams going into the 2023 NFL season as we concluded our player rankings going into this season as well. This is the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 88 and Secret Weapon Consulting. Adam Wright here with CJ Medeiros. Tuck is at work again. So it's just the two of us, but CJ, top 10 teams and most underrated teams in the fan box. So all teams today, rather than the player rankings, a little bit of a change of pace here. So how you doing?
I'm all right. It's always great to, actually like sit here and rank teams because, the overall like just player, that's all well and good. But if it was just about one player per team, then that would just be boring. But teams, it's so crazy how they're built. Some are stacked, some are just middling, and some are just completely top heavy. So it's like having everyone else just on a team, truly, it's the great equalizer.
That is the way teams tend to work. So I know we were going to go, each of us going, so we're doing top 10 going into the 2023 NFL season. So I know we were going to do four, like I cover four, you cover four. Who wants, do you want me to go first or you? I know
I can go first. It's whatever.
All right. So going with, are we going to go with the list that we have on this one right here?
That looks good to me.
All right. Why don't you kick us off with 10 through 7?
All right. Kicking us off at number 10, and this one hurts me, the New York Jets. Having a franchise quarterback will do that to you. Although what's going to happen after Rodgers is gone, we don't talk about that. But I mean, just look at that. Rodgers, reigning offensive and defensive rookies of the year, just a ferocious defense. The Jets are primed to be something special. And the only reason, keep this in mind, folks, the only reason we don't have them higher is solely because they're just in a tough division. You have the Dolphins, the Bills, and even the Patriots, while not the most flashy team, can give you a run for your money on any given Sunday. Now, moving on to number 9, the Seattle Seahawks. And I never thought I would put a team led by Geno Smith in the top 10, but wow, did he pick a time to have a career year. He has an offense that features Kenneth Walker, Noah Fant, Will Dissly, DK Metcalf, and their other receiver. Oh, yeah, Tyler Lockett. With a young upcoming defense. Once again, like the division they're in, it's a 2-horse race with them and the 49ers. So that's why we put them at 9. Speaking of which, the 49ers are number 8. Now, if Brock Purdy was healthy, you can make a case they're top 5. But it just seems like no matter what, they've never had a healthy quarterback, be it Jimmy G, be it Trey Lance, be it Brock Purdy. If their quarterback situation was figured out, because that team everywhere else is loaded. Because, I mean, I'm just saying, that team with a healthy quarterback, top 5. But alas, Brock Purdy will be coming back this year. We just don't know when. And then number 7, and this is another one that feels weird to me, the Detroit Lions. You rebuilt the secondary. You have a young, hungry, upcoming defense, a solid offensive line, Jared Goff turning back the clock, and Amon-Ra St. Brown and David Montgomery. That is a scary, scary unit, especially in a weak AFC North, which could mean the Lions could go far. All right, Adam, you got the next 4?
Yep. So I got 6 through 3. Then we're going to alternate for the top 2. And I got to say, I was going to have the Lions a little higher, and I would be covering them. But I was overruled. This is a general top 10 for the 3 of us co-hosts. So I had to compromise a little bit. But just for the record, so that whenever the Detroit Lions are NFC champions and heading to the Super Bowl. I just want that to be for the record. I had them higher, but we put them lower just because they haven't proven anything yet. So I understand, but I'm just raising
the
my
Jets
objection.
are 10 too. That's all.
Yeah, we had the Jets 10, and that's a team that I'm pretty high on as well. But these are all question marks. They're teams that we don't know if they'll be as good as we say they will be. But without further ado, I have the Ravens at number 6, a team that if they meet the expectations that we have for them, where they should be a much better passing offense and be more two-dimensional, they should be a little better than 6, right? This is a team that has always had a very good defense. Their offensive line's been solid. It has always been their passing attack that's been their Achilles heel. I think they figured it out. Assumedly so, they've figured it out. So we'll see how they do with that. But apparently they have fixed their only weakness. So let's see how that goes. But I have the Ravens. I'm very high on them. They don't win the division because the number 1 in that division is a pretty good team. But here's a number 5
I don't let Justin hear that.
is the best in their own division in the AFC South, which is the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this is another team that, if it weren't for all the question marks, I would say this team is closer to the top. Because everywhere you look, this team has talent. And they are young, and they are hungry, and they clearly had some good momentum going into the end of last year, right? They finished, 6-2 towards the end of the season and snuck into the playoffs with an above 500 record, which none of us expected. And their quarterback messiah, Trevor Lawrence, looks awesome. He had a great stretch last year towards the end of the season. So all good things. And then you add in Calvin Ridley when you already had Christian Kirk as a wide receiver 1 who we thought was a 2. Turns out he can actually do pretty well as a number 1. And you also have Evan Engram. The list goes on with those players. That team could be a top 3 seed in the AFC if all things go right. Speaking of teams where a lot of things need to go right, we got number 4, which is the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs are a very flawed team. Their defense isn't perfect, but it's pretty good. Their offensive line is pretty good. Their tight end is the best in football. There's no question about that. The only reason we have them number 4 is out of respect for Patrick Mahomes and also the defending world champs here. This Chiefs team is still going to be very good. You can pretty much book it on your betting marks that Patrick Mahomes is going to throw for 25 to 30 touchdowns a year. That's not debatable. Even if your number 1 wide receiver right now is Kadarius Toney. This is a team that's a slam dunk playoff team. They're probably going to be division champions. Even though their wide receiving core is extremely suspect, Patrick Mahomes still figures out ways to get it done. And who are we to bet against him at this point, especially after the last year's performance, right? That leads me to my number 3, which is probably the most sure thing on this list, which is the Buffalo Bills. Now, the Bills, what you see is what you get with this team. Are they winning a Super Bowl? Probably not. Are they going to win 13 games? Most likely as well, because this is a great regular season team with a gunslinger quarterback, a very good wide receiver 1 in Stephon Diggs. You have a good number 2 in Gabe Davis, and they have probably their best tight end duo in franchise history with Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. The only issue with this team, which has kept them from getting over the hump, is that running game. It is terrible. And whenever their passing game fails, they don't have a rushing game to make up for it. That being said, their passing offense is an air show. It's awesome. It's going to be awesome again. But you also have a pretty good defense as well. So pretty much the most sure thing on this list is the Buffalo Bills at number 3. Now, there's our top 8. Now, the final countdown, the top 2. CJ, give us your number 2.
Our number 2 is the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, let's look at their roster. Jalen Hurts played like he had a career best season and got paid like it as well. You've got a good running back room that features DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny. A good 1-2 punch at wide receiver with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Arguably a top 5 tight end in Dallas Goedert. In my opinion, the best offensive line in football and a defense that might have gotten a little better. Now, top to bottom, like roster-wise, this could very well be the best team in the league. What's holding it back for being number one, you might ask? Now, we've said it multiple times. We know it is an analytical answer, but I don't care what the analytics may or may not say. Super Bowl hangover. It's very, very real. And how many times have we seen that affect a team? 2015 Carolina Panthers, right? They lost and oh, God, that hurt them. The Seahawks getting bounced out in round one after 2014. Falcons getting bounced out in round one later. So Super Bowl curse, like we said, not analytical, but it's always something to watch out for. But not taking that into account, this is a darn good roster and it's a decent division. But overall, I mean, just look at that team. However, when it comes to firepower, we believe there's only one team that's better. Adam?
Our number one going into next year is the Cincinnati Bengals. And you talk about a team that, now we talked about that Super Bowl curse. They lost the Super Bowl II last year. And they had that hanging over their heads clearly for the first half of the season. Then their offensive line that they just built up that previous offseason starts to gel a little bit. They give Burrow time to throw, and down the stretch, they went 7-2. They went on an incredible run, and they again faced another barrier, which was that Bills-Bengals game. It got suspended, and instead of offering neutral grounds to the Bengals, who were part of that game, they offered it to the Chiefs and only gave it to the Chiefs and Bills, which is asinine, complete stupidity.
Amen.
And they really, really botched that one. A team that was actually part of the game that was suspended wasn't even included in these plans. And now the Bengals could have easily just turtled and just said, you know what? Everything is against us right now. It's over. No, they used that as a chip on their shoulder. And they made it all the way to the AFC Championship game, and it took injuries to their interior offensive line for them to actually fall apart in the end. And it was still a very close game in that AFC Championship between them and Kansas City. Just Burrow was sacked 5 times. There's only so much you can do when your quarterback doesn't have time to throw. Not trying to take anything away from Kansas City, who are now the defending champions. They earned that Super Bowl victory. They deserve it. And Patrick Mahomes is a complete stud. Slam dunk, the best quarterback in football. But now the Bengals have a lot of momentum going into this year. And they not only have their offensive line coming back healthy this year, but they added to it. They brought in Orlando Brown, and they have everyone else coming back healthy. Name a team whose backup tackle, one of their backup tackles is La'el Collins, another Pro Bowl caliber tackle. And on top of that, the backups who they had in the postseason were really good too. That was their Achilles heel, and they figured that out. Not to mention their defense is still young and getting even better. This is a team that should be not only representing in the AFC and the Super Bowl, but also winning it all. This is a great team, the best Bengals team in franchise history. I should have them at 13, 14 wins, if that. This team is going to be awesome.
Yep. Also, you forgot to mention that they got rid of the cancer known as Eli Apple. That actually helps. Addition by subtraction, kids.
And I was going to mention their secondary. I refrained because I just, their defense in general is really good. Very underrated. They don't have any superstars, but they have a lot of guys who can play at a high level, high enough so that this defense as a collective unit can supplement a Super Bowl winning team. You have Cam Taylor-Britt, you have Chidobe Awuzie, and Mike Hilton. Those are your three corners. And then on top of that, so you lose Jesse Bates and the other guy, Von Bell. You slide in Dax Hill to the starting role because he was your first round pick. He ought to be at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And then you sign Nick Scott to a contract, another very good safety. You replaced your safeties overnight. So this is top to bottom, arguably the best team in Bengals history. So all great things going on over in Cincinnati.
Yep.
So there you have it. Our official top 10 teams going into the 2023 NFL season. Obviously, things are bound to change. A lot of things that we are going to have change for this upcoming season. Everyone winds up being wrong about something. I'm sure we will. But without further ado, we want to know what you guys think about the most underrated teams. So we kind of named our top 10. What do you think are teams that we are undervaluing, that are being slept on? We asked you guys that. That is next. This is the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. This is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown!
Back to the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 88 and Secret Weapon Consulting. Adam Wright with CJ Medeiros. Tuck is out tonight because he has work. So we welcome you to the Fumblerooski fan box portion of our show. So we post a question filter on our Instagram every Monday, and you can respond with hot takes, questions, and more. And we will discuss it and give you a shout out on our podcast. Respond to next week's fan box question to be featured on our show. Now, the question of the week was, who are the most underrated teams going into this season? We lead off with Grayson Mortimer, who said the Dolphins haven't had much press. They've kind of been written off because of this past season. But I mean, I kind of agree in the sense that this team was, when Tua was healthy, one of the best in the league, at least on the AFC side. I mean, there was a point they were what, 8-3? And they were contending for the number one spot in the AFC. If it weren't for these injuries, I mean, they barely slipped into the playoffs with what they had. And I mean, Tua was playing pretty well until he got the 3-4 concussions that he had.
Yeah, and that's the thing, with Tua and all. He's a good quarterback, but the O-line obviously allowed him to get hurt like that. And that's the thing. They haven't really improved it, which, I'm not going to say they're overrated, but I don't know. Everybody knows what they are at this point. You had Jalen Ramsey too, but that didn't work out quite so well.
Now they have Eli Apple.
Oh, yeah.
So that's going to work out well for them. But we'll see. They needed to improve their offensive line, and they didn't, which is one of the big disappointments of this Miami Dolphins team. Because going into last year, I was very excited to see them play. And they didn't disappoint for the time they were healthy, but that offensive line just wasn't good enough. They need another tackle opposite Teron Armstead. But Diego Huertas said, so we got a couple votes for Jacksonville. Floodster Sports Zone said, easily the team down in Duval, the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Diego Huertas said Jacksonville, and he also said the Lions. A team that I believe, if all goes right for them, and it should, there's nothing that I could see that would go wrong, unless, barring any serious injuries, but you can say that about most of the league. This Jacksonville Jaguars team is good, young, talented. They look like they're good playing with each other. There's no chemistry issues, and their quarterback is a stud. it's going to get to a point where we can mention him in the same breath as Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Joe Burrow.
Yeah, that's true. And I do want to point out the issue isn't like them winning the division, because outside of them, that division is terrible. I mean, maybe the Titans, but I don't know.
Yeah, not the Titans.
But
maybe, but
I mean, it depends. But the question is, when they get to the playoffs, how far can they go?
I think this team has the talent to win the Super Bowl.
No, I think they do. But the AFC, that's going to be a tough road to traverse.
Yeah, especially with seasoned and experienced teams such as the Bengals and the Chiefs at this point, and the Bills. All three teams the past couple of seasons have made deep playoff runs. So, I think I like Jacksonville, but they're inexperienced. That's a good point. So on to our Lions votes. Not only did Diego Huertas pick the Lions, but also Nick Reyes and Stephen Parker, all Detroit Lions guys, for most underrated. And again, as I was mentioning during our rankings, I think that's a team that could go really, really far. And I think that team could be representing in the Super Bowl again. I mean, like,
it's
look
very
around.
possible. This
With
is
the
the best
talent
team they've
across
had
the
in a
board.
bit.
It's the best team they've had in the 21st century.
Yeah, I mean, you can mention this team in the same breath as like the Stafford to Johnson Lions.
Yeah, you got
And-
Amon-Ra St. Brown. You got Jamison Williams after his 6-game suspension.
Yep. And also, you got David Montgomery out of the backfield, a line being built up. You got CJ Gardner-Johnson, Aiden Hutchinson on the defense. And on top of that, their division is weak. So there's no reason for the Detroit Lions, unless everybody gets hurt, not to win.
Yeah, and the Bears should be kind of competitive, or at least make strides towards that, but they shouldn't threaten for the division at all.
I wouldn't think so, no.
They're a year or so off, but the Lions, that's the team to beat in the NFC North. Going on to our next votes, we've got, Chase McGinty also said Lions, but he also said, I'm expecting big things from the Bears this year. So another team, I just finished mentioning them, but so other people who said the Bears, Johnny Zaccaro, Conrad Sperry, who said duh Bears. The Bears are a young team, and we're still figuring out if Justin Fields is the guy too. So there's a lot of question marks there. And I guess that could be classified as an underrated team, but they've improved their defense. They've improved their offensive line drastically. So now Justin Fields will actually have time to throw.
And he's a wide receiver one.
They got him some toys to throw to with DJ Moore. You also have at the number 2, Darnell Mooney. You also have Chase Claypool, who has the potential to be much better than he has been if he could get his head screwed on straight.
That's a big if.
Big if, but it's
also
it's a
Cole Kmet.
And Cole Kmet.
However you pronounce it. Yeah.
That's a really, really good team. And if Justin Fields can play, then this is going to be a good year for the Bears. Maybe not a Super Bowl winning year because they are young, but they would be making strides in the right direction towards the Bears finally being back to where they once were, where, they were actually a good team once upon a time. But we have some Steelers votes. Owen Van Zlack said, without a doubt, it's the Steelers. Eli Angerone said Steelers, in parentheses, coming from a Ravens fan. You have more strength than our co-host. I'll say that. Tuck would never admit to that.
Yeah,
Ian
when I was posting the fan box, that's what I thought too.
Yeah. Ian Mulhern said Steelers or the Browns, if you can make a case for both. So the Steelers are another team that's young and probably too young to really get anywhere just yet. But they finished 8-9 last year, or 9-8.
9-8, I think.
No, so Tomlin continued his stupid little streak.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I'm not going to address why the streak doesn't mean anything, but I will say this all hinges on Kenny Pickett because they beefed up the line. You have Najee Harris at running back. George Pickens is going to be a stud this year.
He's
And you have
primed for a
guys like
breakout year.
Deontay Johnson, too. And, of course, that defense featuring Alex Highsmith, Cameron Hayward, and everyone's favorite TJ Watt. And this is all going to come down to if Kenny Pickett can play, which I would think he can. Oh, but if he can't, that's going to be a problem. However, they also suffer from what the Patriots are suffering from, where the division they're in is just loaded.
Yeah, there's that too. And we had two of their division in the top 10 for us with the Bengals and the Ravens. And the Browns haven't been mentioned yet, which they will right here. Ian Mulhern said the Browns too, and Brian Mucker also picked the Cleveland Browns, a team that really has fallen off the map since Deshaun Watson's 11-game suspension. They had their short claim to fame when they traded for the coveted quarterback, and it looked like they had a pretty good team around them, which they still do. It's just they lost Deshaun Watson, their quarterback, for 11 games for obvious reasons. But I mean, that was their risk when they brought in such a controversial figure, but still an incredibly talented quarterback who, with the roster around him, if all things go right, which big if with that sprinkled Browns dust all over him, if all things go right, this team should be mentioned in the same breath as everyone else in the AFC North.
Yeah, that's true, but it's all hinging on Watson. Yeah, a lot of teams where their success completely hinges on their quarterback. Because you got to remember, they gave up a haul to get Watson, and if Watson doesn't pan out, then you're just gonna look really, really stupid.
Yeah. I mean, if they don't make the playoffs once, or if they just finish anywhere less than an AFC championship in the time that they have Deshaun Watson, then it's a massive bust. I mean, Watson robbed this organization of its money. I mean, they still haven't gotten many games from him. But would you believe me if I said the Panthers got the most votes for us?
Yeah, kind of.
So we got quite a few of them. Owen Van Slack said Panthers honestly might surprise some people. Carolina Cast Sports said Carolina Panthers. Definitely no bias there. Ogden Hill said Carolina Panthers. Tyson Tate said don't sleep on Carolina. There seems to be a lot of optimism with him and with that team and Bryce Young. And I get it. They have some pieces there, some underrated wide receivers, I'll say. A very good offensive line. I mean, their defense is going to be loaded. That's no question mark there. But Bryce Young is really short. And I know that there have been some quarterbacks in the past who have been able to overcome that. But I feel like we only look at the success stories and not the bigger picture where it usually does not work out.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's solely because Bryce Young is a rookie. If he had like a few years under his belt, and in that division, I would say, oh yeah, they've got a shot. But I don't know. The whole thing is just they're too young.
Also, give that team a real wide receiver one.
They had one.
Yeah. Well, if they still had DJ Moore, then they wouldn't have had the number 1 overall pick to get Bryce Young.
Yeah,
so
true.
It's understandable for Carolina's side too. But we got a couple Seahawks votes though. And I like this one. I do like the Seahawks this year. They didn't make our top 10. They did. They did, but
no,
they barely
they did.
You wanted them out. And
it was because of Geno Smith. That's why. Because
he
needs to prove he can do it again.
Yeah. And he has a better roster this year to do it.
Technically, yes.
The interior offensive line is better, which was a weak point for them. Their defense has gotten much better. Not just on the front seven, but they improved on their strengths, which was partially which was their secondary. They got Devin Witherspoon. All right. We got some Vikings votes too. Cola DJ said Vikings. Tyson Tate said everyone's really just forgetting that the Vikings went 13-4 last year and expect them to be bad.
Yeah. Well, I addressed this when we were posting the responses on our story. Yes, the Vikings did go 13-4 last year. Why do we expect them to be bad? Because they were fraudulent. They were bounced out in round one and first team in NFL history that had like 12 plus wins with a negative point differential.
Yeah.
Also, I don't want to nitpick, but you forgot to list, I think, who said Seahawks.
Are you sure? Right.
Yeah.
Hang on.
I'm looking at it now.
Yeah.
I could.
Josh Hool and Landon Wepper said Seahawks. I need to go through I'll go through these last two for the Giants, and then I actually have to hop off. If you wouldn't mind finishing these off and then giving us the outro.
Of course. I forgive you.
Nick Reyes said the Giants, and I think I'm forgetting one more who said Giants who I didn't list. As my dog is yelling.
No, it's fine. It's a.
Hang on. Jesus. But the Giants, it was Eli Turner. The Giants are a team that definitely improved. They look better.
Yeah.
I just have a hard time having them over the Eagles and Cowboys because they haven't improved that much.
Yeah, they also paid Daniel Jones over $100 million, which I don't know how, but he needs to have a career year because if you actually look at his numbers, they're not that impressive. I'd say they're below average. He just needs to justify why they paid him that much.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right there. Yeah. All right, I have to hop off. Because I have somewhere to be. I apologize, but thank you guys for tuning into the show. Thank you for tuning in for 201 episodes now at this point. As we head into this regular season, don't forget, football is this week. Thursday, the Hall of Fame game.
Oh boy, the most meaningless of all the meaningless preseason games. But either way, it's going to be nice to have football back.
It's football. I don't care. It's just a good sign that football is on its way back. All right. I don't know if I can leave this, so I'm just going to turn my screen off and then I'll just have it left here just in case because I'm not sure. I started the episode.
No, I can do it from my end. It's cool.
All right, cool. All right. Bye everyone and enjoy the rest of the episode with CJ.
Wow, no pressure or anything. But Adam has to step out, so we will just finish off the last of the fan box. So we just covered the New York Giants. Then Connor Fallon said the Rams. Now, the Rams have some good pieces. You know, you got Matt Stafford, you have Aaron Donald, and you have, what's his name? Cooper Kupp, who's coming back from injury. Yeah, well, the issue is they're very top-heavy, not to mention they lost guys like Darrell Henderson, Allen Robinson, and Jalen Ramsey as well. Oh, and Taylor Rapp and Leonard Floyd. So I'm not saying they're overrated, but I don't know if they're underrated. I don't know if they're going to be that good. Next up, William Mantle said the Jets. And I mean, look, as a Pats fan, you know, not a big Jets fan, but can we really call the Jets underrated after all, like the coverage they got? Then again, some people aren't going to give them that respect. So, I mean, maybe you're right. Then Patrick Williver said, Falcons going to win the division. Book it. That's bold. And I like it. I do. But it's all going to come down to Desmond Ridder because you have a good young core with Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts. So it's not like they're starved for talent on offense. But in case you don't remember last year, I was not very high on Desmond Ridder. And if he can play, then I don't see why the Falcons couldn't win, especially with a defense that features guys like A.J. Terrell and Grady Jarrett. And now moving to Owen Vanslack, who said Saints. They don't play a single top 8 quarterback this season, so they're going to dominate all season. I haven't looked extensively at the Saints schedule, so I wouldn't know. But with that division, there's no reason they shouldn't win. Not to mention they just got Derek Carr back, and you have a team which has Michael Thomas coming back healthy for the umpteenth time, I might add. You got Jawan Johnson, Chris Olave, and Alvin Kamara until he's suspended for assaulting that guy in Vegas. But even when he does, when he does get suspended, you have Jamal Williams, and that is going to help immensely. Next is Eli. I'm going to butcher this pronunciation. I'm sorry. I think it's Angarone or Angaroni. I don't know. Eli, if you hear this, please correct us via DM. He put the Cardinals next to a clown emoji. Now, obviously, that's a joke. I won't lie, though. I do think the Cardinals are in trouble considering the fact you have a quarterback who would rather be a Madden quarterback than a real one. Sorry, not sorry. That's just how it is. Kyler Murray does not care. And I'm hoping that their new coach, Jonathan Gannon, can smack some sense into him. Next is Andrew Michalak, who says the Ravens. With all the hype around the Bengals, I'll admit the Ravens have been a wee bit overshadowed, but they can be so much more. The key is Lamar has to stay healthy. That's a tall order, but he can do it. He was a unanimous MVP back in 2019. Never forget. And finally, Michael Price said the Packers. I agree. Wholeheartedly, I agree. If Jordan Love is who we think he is, then the Packers have nothing to fear. But I don't know. You can't chuck this kid into the fire. But what choice do you really have? You've got a decent young offense to build around, and your defense is all right. I mean, you have Jair Alexander. You've got you just drafted that rookie Lucas Van Ness. I think you still have Kenny Clark. So the Packers, I think, should be fine. But the Lions are on the up and up, and you still have to defend your throne. And that about does it for the Fan Box. And so, therefore, that'll do it for us tonight. Thanks for listening to us. We have new episodes out on Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we also have all of our podcasts available on Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and so much more. Also, be sure to follow our Instagram at Fumblerooski_podcast to keep up with our podcast and the latest coverage on the NFL. Otherwise, we will see you next week. Over and out.